Time is now 6:33. The date is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. Commissioner Cossadoy is absent this evening. We'll take a virtual call. Jim Franklin's here. Megan?
Here.
Kalina Vendetti?
Here.
Dot McFarland?
Here.
Brian Payne? Here. All right, we'll open the meeting. Please note that we're doing a hybrid meeting with in-person and virtual attendance. If a member of the virtual public would like to make comments during the public hearing, please use the raise the hand function on Zoom, and you will be assigned a speaking time. If you are listening in via telephone dial-in, press *9 to raise your hand and then press *6 to unmute yourself. This meeting is being recorded by Local Scene, and a record of this meeting will be posted on the Local Scene website as soon as they are able. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at this time. Hearing none, we'll move forward. We have an announcement. The Kingston Conservation Commission is seeking a new member. Commissioners are responsible for protecting the town's natural resources, including through enforcement of state and local wetland protection laws. Those interested should reach out to the Conservation Department by calling 781-585-0537 or emailing Matt Pineller at mpenella@kingstonma.gov. All right, Matt, signing documents. Can you brief us what needs to be signed?
Apex for MS4 support, Horsley Witten Group for 20 Marriott Drive peer review. We have a Real Worth appraising consulting invoice for appraisal of 20 Maple Street. Strong Tree Engineering for Bates Pond trail planning, and WB Mason invoice for office supplies. And we also have the orders of conditions for 58 Shore Drive that were voted at the last meeting.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to action items. I will now continue a public meeting to discuss the request for a certificate of compliance for 114 Country Club Way submitted by Brad Holmes of Environmental Consulting and Restoration in regards to orders of conditions issued to Kevin Tonsberg for construction of a single-family home and associated work within the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. Matt, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm recommending continuance again. This is something that we kicked down the road from when they filed it, because the property was sold, and when we did the site visit, it was apparent that the new homeowner had done work that was not in compliance with the orders of conditions. Nothing that jumped out immediately as requiring enforcement action, and also that permit is still valid, so I don't think there's a necessity to take enforcement action to, bring them to the table on a COC. So we reached out recently to Brad, and he said he hadn't heard anything from the property owner, but he was going to reach out. So my recommendation was to sort of kick this towards the fall and give them the time to work on it.
All right. Does the commission have any comments? Public, do we have any comments from the public? All right. Do I hear a motion to continue to September 9th, 2026?
Make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Kalina. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Brian. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes 5-0. All right, I will now continue a public meeting to discuss the request for certificate of compliance, RCOC, for 208 Brookdale Street submitted by Herbert Meyer IV in regards to orders of conditions issued to Tom Nava for construction of a barn within the 100-foot wetland buffer zone and 200-foot riverfront area. Matt, do you have any comments?
Very similar. This is one that was filed a while ago that we kicked down the road. Since then, we have been in communication with the property owner. The property owner has submitted a letter to us, to the commission, stating that they will be doing the work that was outside of the orders of conditions. We plan to work with them just to make sure that everything gets done over the next couple months. So similarly, just looking to kick this down the road again so that everything can get done without us having to continue frequently.
Okay. Commission, do we have any comments? Does the public have any comments? Hearing none, perhaps we'll have a motion to continue to September 9th, 2026.
So moved.
We'll give a motion from Brian. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Second by Dot. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes 5-0 to continue to September 9th, 2026. I will now open a public meeting to discuss a request for determination of applicability, RDA for Rocky Nook Beach, submitted by Sean Murphy on behalf of the Rocky Nook Brewster Park Association for proposed removal of 2 cedar trees within coastal wetland resource areas and their associated buffer zones. As this is the first meeting on the proposal, we will now hear an introduction from the applicant.
Sean, do you want to come up to the podium and introduce yourself? And
All right, just before we start, did everybody sign in? There's a sign sheet.
I didn't sign in.
Okay, when you're done, could you just sign in?
Yes. I'm Sean Murphy. I'm the president of the Rocky Nook Brewster Park Association.
Hi, Sean.
How you doing?
do you
So-
want to give a breakdown of your filing, or do you want me to
So pretty
run through
much
my staff
everything
report?
that, we had trees that came down like everybody knows, and so we got the first permits that we got were to take the damage and stuff that was on the street and take everything out of the trees that had been beaten up. And after doing so, you guys said that to do anything outside the initial on-site permit, that we'd have to come back in. So when we got everything removed by Colony Tree, we found out that 2 of the trees that I'm requesting to have taken down have stress fractures up through the trunks. Then there's 2 other trees that ended up getting beat up really bad. Matt, we cut down what you said as far as everything that was broken in those trees at the top of the hill. So that's also something up for discussion too, how to address those. They're not falling or anything, but they're just aesthetically, they're not right. So that is something that some people can talk about. The one in front of Julianne's house, that I really want gone, because there's a lot of activity along that shorefront. And I submitted a picture of kids climbing up into that other tree that leans, the first one that has the caution tape on it. Now, I did talk to Colonial Tree about that, and what the problem is with that tree, yeah, it stands there, it's alive, but the main trunk that comes out has another branch that comes over it, and it's collapsed from 6 inches to 2. So in time, that's gonna end up coming down. And if that tree leans over and pulls out of the ground, it's gonna uproot what's holding the bank together down there. So trying to get that taken down, so then I don't know how to address it as far as, stumping it flush with a grinder, not looking to remove the roots out of the ground, because I know that's an issue. And same thing pertains to the one in front of Julianne's house up by the flagpole. So that's pretty much what it is. I'm all about the liability of those trees and just trying to protect the association from anything that could go wrong. And to me, that's first and foremost. And second, the other 2 trees, there's a couple of people that will talk on those. And I've been told, take a tree, plant a tree. There's all different things that everybody says. This is my first year doing the presidency, so I have like 180 people that are coming at me with what they think they want to do with the trees. So that's why I'm thinking about the liability with the first 2 trees. And have a conversation about the other ones. So that's what I'm looking to get done here tonight.
All right, thank you. We'll now hear a briefing from the conservation agent. Right there.
Yeah, so I think I briefed the commission after issuing an administrative review. They had filed an administrative review to remove some of these trees that got beat up during the winter. They're all eastern red cedars that are, either on or just above the coastal bank down at Rocky Nook. And I issued the administrative review saying that I couldn't approve the removal of the trees, but I could approve the pruning of them to remove anything that was hanging or any obvious hazards. But there was nothing about the trees that reached the level of hazard that I can approve through an administrative review, given how close to the resource areas they are, or potentially even some of them be in the resource areas. So I told him he had to file an RDA for this. That's where we're at now. So the question then becomes, whether the commission's approving, 2 or 4, or what the process is there. Obviously, the commission does not, the threshold for issuing a DOA doesn't have to be hazardous, right? Somebody can have a tree that they want to remove, and the commission can do that in these situations, as long as by doing that, the commission doesn't feel they're allowing something that's going to be detrimental to the resource areas. Stabilization on the coastal bank is a huge issue. Obviously, these trees are providing stabilization, but what Sean said is absolutely correct. Trees provide great stabilization of the coastal bank unless they tip over. And if they tip over and all the roots come up, then you've destabilized the coastal bank. So if that is a concern for one or multiple of these trees, then cutting them down and replacing them with something, different that will also stabilize the coastal bank would be appropriate. Important to note that this area where these trees are is, I think would be considered by the commission to be of a legally developed nature. As a landscaped area, it is an area that's been turf about as far back as you can see on aerial imagery, predating the Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaw. So we're not talking about conversion of a naturally vegetated coastal bank area to non-vegetated. That wouldn't be allowable under the bylaw without a variance. In this case, you're talking about removing a tree from an area that is a managed landscaped area, and you're dealing with the potential for that to cause issues to the resource areas through, losing that stabilization. So I think it's within, the regulations of state and local, in KWPR to remove 2 or even 4 of these trees, provided that they are replaced with appropriate vegetation. I think in this case, the more appropriate thing to do, rather than replace these with trees, would be to replace these with, some of the typical stuff that we see on coastal mitigation plantings. Have it be as close to the coastal resource areas as possible to provide a strip of stabilizing vegetation that's going to be deep-rooted. Something between, native grasses, forbs, shrubs, things like that. Establishment of some sort of a mitigation area could help with that. So that there's a lot that the commission could talk about with this. We don't have a specific planting plan or anything on this, so it's nothing that you have something that you can say, okay, I reviewed this and we feel like this is appropriate. It's more conversational in nature right now, where I think the association, I imagine, would be okay with doing any number of those things. If the commission wants to see something put down on paper on that, then we could do that. If the commission's comfortable with coordinating it with my office between the association and my department, we could do that too. If you want more information, we can ask for more information.
This time we'll open the meeting to public comment. Please share any relevant concerns or information that should be taken into consideration.
We have a hand raised online. If you want to go with that one first.
Sure, let's start with Ms. Walsh.
Yes, my name is Julianne Nemus Walsh, and I live in Rocky Nook, and I have worked with Matt Piniella in the past. Rocky Nook has invested more than $3,000 or $4,000 just in the last year in putting in deep-rooted native grass, as well as plants that have been approved by Mass Coastal, as well as the Conservation Commission. There are, one of the trees they're talking about happens to be in front of my house. And it's not only, the tree, half of the main trunk is missing. It's completely gutted in the center of the tree, with at least 2/3 of that trunk missing. So I certainly know that Rocky Nook has been committed to stabilizing it. And as Matt knows and others know that, trees can stabilize, but they can also erode and ruin an embankment and the sense of its stability. And that's exactly what's happened in Rocky Nook along the beach, from a ramp area over to North Street, there's been the erosion of the trees, the tensile force with the winds have created a lot of destruction within Rocky Nook. And I think that anything that we can do to improve the plant and the vegetation is something I'm all for, but I also think that we need to consider the destruction that's occurring from some of these trees.
All right, any other comments?
Just before you get there, one thing I didn't mention, you're welcome to go up, but was that the commission hasn't seen much of this, and the photos we have mainly are from before when the pruning was done. Marilyn was out on site with Georgiana and I, because she happened to be around the day that we went down to look at that, but I forgot she wasn't going to be here tonight. So obviously, if it's something the commission feels like they want to go see before making a decision, we can do that. And there is the opportunity to write a DOA with conditions where, you know, obviously the two trees that have more damage to them, where there is more of a risk factor to it, and they are further gone after all the pruning that needed to happen, you know, mitigation for that could be a lot simpler than, you know, the other two that sort of people want gone, that aren't as clear of a hazard or aren't as clearly, you know, impacted. My office would want to see more substantial mitigation if we're talking about more of a, I want to cut those down versus these ones are going to go and they're going to be, you know, likely an issue. So there is the ability to work with those sort of things too.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dan Cullivan. I live at 39 Rocky Nook Ave. I'm here to speak to the two trees that aren't on your agenda. Basically, clearly those trees have been structurally compromised, not only by the storm, but by the pruning. They're due to come down. They're not gonna live, in my opinion.
Let me just ask you to just hang on one sec. Matt, he said not on our agenda. Is it more trees than the 4 trees, or is it?
No, you've only got 2 trees on your agenda.
Okay, but we've heard about 4 trees.
There are two
So I'm
trees
talking
that
about
are
the other two.
specifically on the agenda, and there are 4 trees total that there's a discussion about. So there's a thing where they might, you know, modify for the 4 trees if it's something the commission is willing to entertain, but there were 2 trees that were specifically on the agenda as these are the 2 trees that are the most damaged, that were recommended by, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that were recommended by the arborist to be removed.
Okay. Did that cover what you?
So basically,
Well,
when I-
Can't talk from back
You
there,
have
sorry.
to step up
So when I-
no, you have to step, there's a microphone and people can't hear, so.
So when I did do that application, I did stress the 2 that needed to come down. That's why I put the caution tape on them. And I did put in that application to visit those 2 other trees on the hill. So it was 4 trees. On the plot plan that I gave you, the location of the trees with the longitude and latitude, that information was on that picture you have, that sketch. So it's 4 trees. You said 2 trees, but the application that I put in has obviously the 4 trees. 2 of them are marked to come down, the other 2 would have a discussion about. So that's how it was submitted. So that's why I'm of the impression it was 4 trees.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Okay, sorry,
That's all
I
right.
wasn't following. I wanted
let me
to
just
make sure.
start again. Clearly, they've been compromised. Structurally, the integrity is gone. I was the president of the association back in 2018, and at that time, I brought coastal zone management out. Jason Bertner came out and told me, first thing he said out of his mouth is, these trees aren't doing you any favors. Every time the tree moves, it disrupts the earth below, and he said, they're not doing you any favors. So I think if we're gonna limit it to the first 2 that we were talking about, I would like to see some kind of maybe a certified arborist come out and give an opinion as to how long they're gonna live, because clearly they're not gonna survive. So why would we prolong the inevitable? Let's take them all 4 down.
Can I just question that, wasn't there already a certified arborist out there assessing these?
No.
That wasn't a certified arborist that did the pruning work?
I thought
I think he is. That's my opinion. That's what I thought.
So-
My question, because there was talk, it was either colonial tree or then there was an arborist, but I was confused on if there was an arborist or if colonial tree did the work.
Colonial tree did the work.
But they're not an arborist.
Not an arborist.
I
Why don't you do me a favor, just,
Yeah.
you seem like you're gonna have to stay up here for us, all
Oh,
right?
that's fine.
Okay. Because otherwise, whoever's online won't be able to hear.
So when we had the talk, I did talk to you multiple times in and out of the office when I was doing the permits. So I did have discussions, and I did say that, you know, they don't have a stamp to do that.
Okay.
Colonial Tree does know and follow the guidelines that they would, but they don't have the paperwork to put in front of you to say, okay, that's certified. But the way they cut, the way, I'm learning this as this process coming into this as a new president, and I thought that you guys, if it had to come to it, would send an arborist out there to try to say, okay, these trees, this, that, and the other. So
Hopefully it won't come to that. We just,
I really don't think it should. So
So-
everything that we're asking for here,
No, let's,
I can,
we heard that, let's just try to keep this on track, so, stay there, though, we might have more
So
questions.
to answer that a little bit, for procedure-wise, no, it's not us. It's typically, it's the applicant that hires the arborist to do assessments like this. So if it's a matter of, now, and Sean's right, so the application did specifically say 4 trees, 2 trees for safety reasons, right? So it was 2 trees for safety reasons, and then there was the 2 trees for more aesthetic reasons, which is sort of why I was talking about that potential split between,
safety
you
issue
know,
there too.
what,
I get this one.
you guys gotta wait
Yeah.
until, so there, like I said, is potential, because the commission does not have to only react to hazard trees. If somebody wants to clear trees from an area, particularly a landscaped area, even though it's close to a resource area, potentially on a resource area, that's something the commission can do. But like I said, in situations where it is more aesthetic and there is a potential that you think that might be a detriment, then there is likely the requirement for more mitigation in that situation. If it's a matter of, you know, think that all 4 are hazardous or hazardous to the coastal bank, then having that information from an arborist would help, or having that information from Jason Bertner would help too. Because obviously, like I said, I understand that trees, when you're talking about either earth dams or coastal bank, are beneficial to a point because they're stabilization until they're not. It would be, you know, if CZM's posture on those cedar trees is that removal of them would do absolutely nothing detrimental to the coastal bank, then I think that helps your case for removing all 4 trees without having to add a lot more plantings there for stabilization. You all know, anybody who's talked to me about this area knows my posture on the more native plantings you can have there, the better you're going to stabilize the coastal bank over the long term. You've taken some steps to do that over the last couple of years. More of that will certainly help the case of the area for stabilization. But if you want to come back with more information from, you know, an arborist, and I can coordinate with CZM on having them take a look and see if he, you know, confirms what you just said, where he says, yeah, absolutely, these trees are doing nothing beneficial for that
Do we need
coastal
to go
bank.
that far, though?
I don't know. Keep the conversation going as far as whether the commission would
Let's just run the
entertain
process.
removal of 2 or 4. Otherwise, if you want to come back with that extra information, that may.
Can I suggest something?
Let me just, let me ask you. You're here tonight to ask to be able to remove 2 that are hazard trees, 2 that may or may not be long-living trees, and maybe they have to come down anyways. We've heard from Ms. Walsh saying that you guys have done some mitigation in the area previously. Are you offering mitigation against these as part of what you're asking for, so that we can talk about it all at once, or are you asking just to take down the trees tonight?
I'd like to take down the 2 trees, and if the board wants us to have an arborist look at the 2 trees that Dan is talking about, I would like to have that, I have a meeting, the first meeting with the association on Sunday, so I can put that in front of the membership vote. I want the 2 trees gone because of the liability, and we'll come back and we'll have an arborist look at those 2 trees and give you the information that you're looking for. Had I known that I had to have the arborist for those 2 on the hill, that would have been done already. So if we can have the decision on the 2 trees, and come back and have a discussion after the arborist looks at them, I think that would be fair.
All right, so it sounds like you need some time to have the arborist write a letter. I think at this point, you've been heard. We started the discussion, come back with a letter. I think the best thing that we could do is continue it until,
So what do I do about the 2 trees that I'm flagging for safety?
the,
I'd like a
These
decision
are the
on
pictures,
that.
right?
And then revisit the 2 other
These
trees.
are pictures from before the pruning was done.
so they're no worse than this, or they're worse than this?
I would say the immediate safety hazards on these trees were removed through the admin review process through pruning. So anything that was hanging, anything that had broken, large branches that were hanging in the trees have been removed. I didn't feel, from an admin review perspective, that there was an immediate hazard to any of these trees because there was no obvious risk to, a structure or someplace where somebody parks frequently or that sort of thing, and most of them are not particularly tall.
But these
There are
are
a couple
small
that are
cedar
on there are a couple that are on the taller side. I think maybe the one that's down by Julian's house was a little on the taller side, but, yeah, it certainly didn't seem like it was anything that was in imminent danger of collapse. Having said that, they say there are kids climbing them. That's probably not the best when you have a tree that's not in great shape and people are climbing it.
All right.
Again, though, just to clarify, to Sean's point, there's no requirement that you have a certified arborist review those other 2 trees. If you're making a request to
That's
remove
what
the
I'm-
4 trees,
well, that's what I'm-
you're welcome to
I'm
ask to
open to
remove
both
trees that do not
Guys,
have.
Sorry.
Guys.
This is my first time here.
I know, but.
Just let me finish
While there's
what I'm saying.
talking, we don't talk. We try to not step, because nobody can hear anything come on the other side of the microphone except a whole bunch of jumbled voices. So we gotta be respectful of people who didn't wanna come in tonight and still wanna be part of the process, okay? Go ahead, sorry, Matt.
So procedurally, there's no requirement for you to have a certified arborist look at those other trees. It helps your case to the commission if you want to remove trees, if they're trees that are going to die anyways, or that are hazardous, or that would be somehow destabilizing to the area. You've already asked for removal of all 4 trees, 2 of them for safety reasons that I think you have a good case for, and 2 of them that is not necessarily for safety reasons. If you want to go back and get a certified arborist and have him look at all 4 of them and say, absolutely, all 4 of these are dangerous and they should go, or 2 are dangerous, the other 2, there's so much damage to them that they're not going to last long, then that definitely makes your case easier for the commission to say yes. Otherwise, I think you're probably looking at more plantings, replacing these with something that will help stabilize that area. So it's up to you, is what I'm saying. It's not that you need to go get a certified arborist and we need to talk to CZM, but I didn't run this past CZM. My assumption would be that these trees stabilize the coastal bank, except if they tip over and the roots come up with them, then it's destabilized. So if there's a tree that's obviously in more of a position where it's more likely to do that because it's leaning or has it's top heavy or something like that, then I think that would be the case. If the trees that aren't, and a few of these probably aren't, they're probably in more of a position now where the top is lighter because it already lost a bunch of the bigger limbs during these storms. We can certainly go get more information from CZM, and you can get more information from a certified arborist, but it extends your process. And then if you have an arborist come to your property, or arborist or a tree company come to your property twice, you're paying more money for the tree removal, right? Because mobilization is a lot of your cost, so if you're taking 4 trees down and they come there once, it's probably pretty similar cost to them coming there once to remove 2 trees, and then you have to pay for it twice. So I don't think there's anything that's an immediate hazard that the commission would say like, okay, well, absolutely, you gotta take these 2 trees down now, we'll issue this permit, and then you have to come back again and file again for the other 2. If you want to just continue this even for 2 weeks, 2 weeks is probably enough. We would need information probably a little quicker than 2 weeks, but if you get an arborist over there to look at them and we can get in touch with Jason Bertner in the meantime, then we can come back in 2 weeks with a lot more information than we have right now. That's up to you.
All right, so we have one permit application in front of us. It's for 4 trees, essentially. You're asking us essentially to split so that you can take down the 2 now, and we'll talk about the other 2. It's really not how the paperwork works. It's just either we talk about all 4 of them, or we have to strike something off and you have to submit another application and talk about that later. If that's what you're asking for, I don't see why we couldn't do something like that, but it's another step for you guys. It doesn't sound like there's immediate safety concerns aside that you are saying that people are climbing on it. I understand that that's different, but as far as the wind coming through, if you guys already pruned things through the admin review process, it's not that these things are dangling and they're gonna fall on somebody's house. They look like they're relatively small trees. Didn't see the other 2, okay? What do you wanna achieve tonight? Do you want to talk 2 trees? Do you wanna talk 4 trees? Are we cutting it in half? What do we do?
All right, representing the for the association, representing them, I'm thinking the money too. I don't want to revisit something twice. I want the company to go down there, and if they're gonna take them down in one whack, it's gonna cost us twice the amount to do it twice. So what I'll do is, I'd like to request that we come back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I'll have a meeting this Sunday. I'll meet with the board tomorrow. We'll vote on it, which I know we'll have a discussion, because that's what the association membership's all about. So I can table that Sunday, and I can get somebody to look at that. I know Newcomb Tree Removal, I think they're certified arborist or whatever, but.
Let me hold you right there. Let me just talk to the board real quick. Guys, we're opening it up to discussion now. So basically, we're already able to remove some trees. Are we comfortable with Matt talking through mitigation so that when they come back in 2 weeks, that they have a plan for whatever the outcome of that discussion is, or do we want to just vote to continue it and not have discussion?
We must well talk about it now, because he can bring it up at his Sunday meeting.
Right. Right. Are we,
Yeah, they haven't really addressed your earlier question about mitigation. And it seems that they want to revisit this in 2 weeks with 4 trees, but I also want to see a plan that outlines what the mitigation will be. Should we allow the removal of those 4 trees, what's going to go in their place? I'd like to see some detail out of that, and whether Matt gives them some guidance outside the committee meeting, or whether we try to do that now, doesn't make any difference to me.
Okay.
We haven't really discussed the mitigation factor yet.
okay. Do we all feel about same about mitigation?
Yeah, I'd also like to see a plan. I know they said it can go like verbal, but like you said, there's 100 some odd people on that, so I don't want them to argue on what's best. We know what's best, and I'd like to see it on paper, so that way there is no confusion going forward.
They do have a hand sketch.
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
we're
but
okay
with the
that?
mitigation and with it,
Yep.
that, they can do that, that's fine. Yeah, I don't need it stamped or nothing, you know, but something that we can look at and say, this is what's supposed to be there, this is what we agreed on going forward.
Just for clarification purposes, I know, like I said, there's a difference between removal for hazard and removal for aesthetics. And you do have a situation where you're close to or in coastal resource areas. And there is concern with destabilization. Beyond that, there's no specific requirement for mitigation. There's no need for variance in this situation. So it's not, I don't know that it warrants mitigation planning at the same level as enforcement actions or where variance is required or things like that. I think you certainly want to see, if you're removing something that's providing stabilization, you want to see something put in its place, not necessarily in that exact particular location where the stump is, but in a area that will provide the best possible protection for the resource areas. So it may be possible to get through some of that without having your typical plan.
I agree. Right.
But as long as there's something that's actionable, that's trackable as a special condition on a DOA.
I agree.
So are you comfortable working with Matt over the next week while you're working on your other steps that you're gonna be there? Are you comfortable having those back and forth conversations? Come back in 2 weeks and we'll try to wrap this up?
Yeah, I want it done as soon as possible, so I didn't mean to cut in if I was cutting in.
Nope,
I'm
go
just-
finish.
So, I just want to be clear on what I'm saying to you guys about the 2 trees that have been red flagged as broken. Julianne, the one in front of Julianne's house, and the other one that's leaning.
Yep.
If I was gonna fight for anything here, for the association, just take down those 2 trees. whether I have 4 trees on this list for tonight or not, I requested for those 2 to come down. The 2 others have to be revisited.
Okay, we've heard the request. Brian?
I'm not sure I totally agree with the commissioner's statement about the detail of planning we need here. I'd lean more heavily to seeing something along the lines of a landscaping drawing. And I'd also like to point out that they need to be really clear about what steps they're going to take during the process to protect the bank area, silt socks or whatever they might be doing. I want to make sure we see pretty detailed plans there as well. Because while they remove the trees and whatever mitigation they do, that's going to be a dangerous time for the environment.
Okay, so
I can-
Brian, go
I can
ahead.
briefly answer that. There shouldn't be a need for any erosion control in this situation. There shouldn't be any ground disturbance in this situation. And I'm looking at it from the perspective if I was issuing an admin review permit on it, and it would be the same from you all issuing a DOA on this. It would specify that you can clear cut it, but no, ground disturbance, no stump grinding.
No stump grinding?
Things like
No.
that.
Okay.
And in situations where, like this, where you have cutting, essentially in a situation where the bar can fling oil into the ocean or directly into a wetland, I include a condition on using biodegradable bar oil. It's simple, it's widely available, it's cheap. Most of the arborists know of it and likely would use it anyways in these situations. But I usually specify that as well, just out of good practices.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
You said, was it Colonial Tree or some other group? Who told you the trees were damaged and should come down?
The first 2 trees, Colonial Tree told me that. I talked to
They
him,
did.
his name's Eric, it was the dad. And then the other trees that were on the hill, he said that's up for a discussion. So the 2 that I red flagged to keep the kids away from,
Yeah.
and the one in front of Julianne's house, that looks like a backhoe bit the top of it, we don't know what's gonna happen with the wind. We're not gonna be planting anything in that spot because the roots disturbed the seawall in front of Julianne's house. So that tree's just gonna get ground down flush. The other ones on the beach would just be cut flush. We're not gonna pull roots out of the ground.
Right, and that's a good thing because red cedar doesn't rot very fast, and the roots will stay helpful to the bank for a long time.
Correct.
Until they do finally rot away.
So that's why we're trying to not, have a big plan to replant and everything, because we're in the process of revisiting what has to be done along that beach, the hill on the beach. We've already, last year, we did $4,000 worth of plantings. I mean, we're working to stabilize everything by
Yeah.
the guidelines of what you set during those plantings. And that I'm all for, and everybody in the association's all for.
Yeah,
So even the 2 that are up top of the hill, if those were to get cut, they're not gonna get stump ground. They're just gonna be right down, all the roots. I'm a firm believer in what you said. I walked the wall today down on the beach, and I saw how some of the other trees still had their claws in the banking. So whatever rots, it's not gonna rot fast in the hill.
right, right.
And then if we want to do something with plantings after the 4 trees are gone, we come back to you and say, look, we have a plan. But, right now, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to look at the liability of it and, table it later for something with plantings. And try not to have it all wrapped together to make it bigger than what it
Yeah,
is.
in my opinion, if a tree cutter told me on my property that a tree was dangerous and in fear of falling, I would have him cut it down. I don't think we should wait on those 2
Well,
trees.
they've already done the immediate work.
Right.
Now,
Right.
there's a bowl there with some canopy left on it, and they want to take those down.
Yeah.
But Matt did an admin review process. They addressed the immediate safety concerns, and now it's just that the tree's broken and there's a crack in it still, but these are small cedar trees, you know what cedars are, so. It's
So I
it's
think
not
that-
an immediate thing, it can be taken care of in part of it, and that's what Matt just said, spoke to.
Okay. I
But I
haven't seen the
agree,
trees,
if it was a
but-
hazard tree that was dangling, then it's it's something that doesn't even come to us at this point. Matt would have just said it's an immediate need and it needs to be taken care, and the admin review would have taken care of it. But he wasn't comfortable with moving forward with the rest of the work, which is why it's up here as a.
Yeah, which is why I want to split it into two. Take those down and deal with the others.
All right,
Just
That's my opinion.
go ahead, Matt.
specifying that procedurally, that
Right,
means
that's
they
not-
have to file again.
Right.
So
Why?
I don't think there's a way for us to
Let's
issue
take a,
two
let's just take a straw
two
poll.
DOAs on one
Yeah, no, there,
RDA.
I think,
Let's
I think
hold on,
they're-
let's just-
I think they're confused on how, we're not asking for plantings before these trees come down. What we're asking for is, you're asking for 2 to 4 trees to be looked at and evaluated. We're saying, we'll do that, but we'd like to see some type of remediation, mitigation, saying, if I take these trees down, I'm gonna do this afterwards. We're not gonna allow you to take down the trees and then come back with a plan, where we can do it all at once. So we'll address the issues with the trees. We're asking you to, not asking, but you can get the trees certified or looked at by an arborist and say, hey, this is our plan when the trees come down, not, I think there's confusion where he thought we can take the trees down, come back, where we can do it all at once. So that way, like you said, you're not wasting money. There's a clear road, road ahead.
all right, let's just try to wrap up some of these things. So it sounds like, from what you said, they want to both address this as 2 different filings and just have it as one filing. Dot has said that she would be okay splitting it. I personally would rather just deal with it as one filing. Well, let's take a straw poll. Are we gonna do this as 2 different filings or a single filing?
I think,
All those in fit,
I think it
One
would make more
filing?
sense, one filing.
I'd say
okay.
one.
So we're just gonna handle this as one filing. Matt's already spoken to the safety part of it, so it sounds like it's a continuation thing. What I think is that I think we've made our voice heard about the planned mitigation, what we think we want to hear when they come back for that RDA, right, if they want a DOA. I think Matt can speak to what needs to be done and will be able to tell us if what they propose is enough to check the box for us. Yeah, is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
No.
Okay. All right, Matt, are you comfortable with that? All right. Are you guys good with the continuance, work with Matt in the meantime, come back in 2 weeks and work forward with
Yeah, I'm
that?
kind of on the fence about it, to be honest with you. Because me, I'm standing here representing the
Okay, you're on the fence
association.
about whether or not you want to wait 2 weeks?
I'm just hopeful that if we revisit this in 2 weeks, okay, that these trees come down. The 2 that are on the hill, and this is where my mind is separated in this. No disrespect. You remember, I'm the president. I'm speaking for there's people that probably want to keep those trees on the hill, and they haven't even spoken yet. So I put down in my application, and I'm specific about the 2 trees that have caution tape on them now. And if those 2 other trees have to be revisited, the amount of money it's going to take isn't going to be so catastrophic to come back and visit for those 2 other trees. Because I have a meeting, association meeting on Sunday, and this will still have to go in front of them. So I would like to have a permit to take the 2 trees down that are a liability, said by the colonial tree, myself, common sense, and knowing that we came in here to try to work with you for 4 trees, but the 2 that are there now, I want gone. I want to be able to go to the association. I have pictures. Does everybody on the board have pictures of these trees I'm talking about, the 2? So that's what I'd like to do as the president.
Can I,
Yeah, comment outline too.
he's the president. It's, as far as the commission is concerned, his application, I think if he wants to go forward with the 2 hazardous trees that are on this, that's a pretty easy thing to go forward with. I think you can go forward with that with a DOA, a -3 DOA with special conditions. Special conditions would be, as I sort of mentioned to Brian, about no stump grinding, biodegradable bar oil, obvious, no material left in coastal resource areas. I think for something like this, you'd want to see still like a relatively equal replication of what you're losing for root mass over the long term for stabilization, but it could be as simple as, you know, for each one of these trees, you're planting, I don't know, maybe 2 coastal shrubs or something like a bayberry or beach plum is something that could work well in that area. Anything that's appropriate, I think, and again, we're not talking about a natural coastal bank area. We're talking about an area that is and has been landscaped, that these trees at one point probably were part of a natural area and they're not anymore, but you still want that stabilization. So if that's what he wants to do, and he confirms that, I think there's no issue with the commission issuing a -3 DOA with those conditions as I just specified, and replacement plantings to be coordinated with the Conservation Department.
I don't object to that, you know. It's not the way I would do it, but if that's how he feels, I don't object to it.
All right, so we'll take it for the 2, and then they can come back
I have
for the
a
other 2.
comment on that, though.
Do we have to vote on that?
Yeah, we will, but.
Let's hear one more comment, and then we'll close. All right, Ms. Walsh?
Yes, as far as mitigation, Matt, you have the list that Rocky Nook submitted to you last year for planting, so I'd propose that we do the 2 trees that are dangerous, and the mitigation plan would be to take from the list that we've already had approved by conservation and purchase plants that are similar to what we've already planted, that are deep-rooted, that have already been approved by the Conservation Commission.
That would check the box right now.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the
All right.
same it wouldn't
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like
No,
2
it would be
plants, it
2
would be a little bit
additional.
more of that for smaller, you know, but.
Correct.
Yeah, but
We're
that would be.
happy to put in
but that would
6
absolutely be
plants each
acceptable.
if you want it.
Yeah, that's probably sufficient, yeah.
All right, are we in agreement to end the discussion? Okay. Do I hear a motion to issue a -3 DOA on the 2 hazard trees, exclude the 2 other trees for a later filing?
I'll make a motion.
As discussed by Matt, and just summarize?
Yes, I make the motion on the 2 trees.
All right, we
To
have
come down.
a motion from Dot, a second.
Second.
By Brian, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that passes 5. So you can do the work. Matt will clearly give you gotta give him some written deal, paperwork.
Yeah.
When will we get that?
So the way this works, we prepare the permit between now and the next meeting, which is May 13th. That will have all the special conditions as discussed tonight. Conservation Commission signs at their next meeting. It's issued to you next day. So you have a permit in hand May 14th. If that absolutely doesn't work and you need a rush on that, we will try to prepare it quicker and see if we can get commissioners to come into town hall and sign earlier.
Okay, I'd like it done as soon as possible, but we're looking to
All right,
work with
thank
you.
you.
Can I say one more thing, please?
We just closed, we have people waiting.
Okay.
Email Matt, he'll walk you through the whole process, okay?
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
You too. All right, we got, what do we got? Now, did all the filings get included? All the NOI?
All the, what are you talking about?
Section A, all right.
Yeah, all we have is KWPR for hearings, so we need to go into that one.
Okay, all right. So we'll jump over to public hearings, Section A, updates to the Kingston Wetland Protection Regulations. I will now open a discussion on updates to the KWPR. Does the agent have any comments?
I think during the last hearing, we talked about the commission members looking through everything that was provided and come up with some form of notes towards a conversation. The only thing I received by email was from Marilyn. I did put that in the OneDrive for review. And in the meantime, I've just been sort of taking notes on various issues, such as, and this is a random side note, but the potential to use, which we already have in KWPR right now, to use wetlands enforcement to deal with issues like dog waste at Grays Beach and other coastal areas in Kingston where it has an obvious impact on coastal resource areas. And there may be ways of rewriting our regulations that allow better enforcement of that than, you know, myself or Conservation Commission or KPD being out there to enforce that. So as far as a general discussion on this, if commission members have not yet reviewed all of those materials and everything, then I think we should kick this to May 13th. But I don't think we should kick it down the road too long because we've already kicked it a few years. And hopefully we can get something going with a contract within the next, you know, probably 2 months, I would say would be good.
Commissioners, do you have any comments?
No.
Does the public have any comments? All right, hearing none. Do we hear a motion to continue to May 13th?
Make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Megan. Do we have a second? Kalina. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we're going to continue to May 13th. We'll drop back to enforcement. 19 Blair Drive, continued from an earlier date. Matt, can you please brief us?
Yes, we did this one on April 8th, so I'm not going to go back in history. Conservation Commission had me issue enforcement orders under state and local regulations mandating that the property owner install 2 additional runs of silt sock or hay bale, splitting the difference between the road and what was already there, and hire an engineer to review the site and provide a signed stamped letter stating that everything was stable. And also, those were to be received by today. And then there was also a portion due in May with the requirement for restoration plan. This is a property owner that also lives in Florida. So the delivery of the EO from a legal standpoint was fine. From a practical standpoint, I don't think was great. You know, Constable delivered the EOs to the property at 14 Blair Drive, you know, the primary residence, and left it on the door, last and usual abode, which is perfectly legal from our standpoint for delivery. And town council's advice had been, you know, we could text it, take pictures of the EO and text it to him, and I wasn't doing that from my personal phone. The town administrator wasn't around at the time this was issued. So I chose to do it by email. I had the you know, email address of the property owner. And about a week after issuing the EO, I hadn't heard anything yet, and I went, I'd really like to get confirmation that he has received and understands all of this stuff. So a week ago, I called his cell phone and he answered, and I went through some of this. And he had not gotten my email, which wouldn't be uncommon. We get buried in spam all the time, particularly for people that I haven't emailed with before. And he was aware that the constable delivered something to his door in Kingston, but he said that somebody called him and kind of read through some of the stuff with him over the phone. So he really hadn't had a great understanding of what the requirements were, which I understand from the commission's standpoint. You're not always going to take something like that and say, okay, yeah, sure, it sounds like what a lot of people would say in those situations. But since that conversation with him, he has taken what I would say is a lot of steps in the right direction. He hired Paul Brogna of Seacoast Engineering, who had some familiarity with the site. Paul went out right away, reviewed the site, contacted me, and told me that he had discussed with the property owner the need for putting those 2 extra sections in, and also that the silt fence needed to be dug in. Property owner wanted to deal with this himself, said he was going to be flying up to Massachusetts, I believe, yesterday, and dealing with all of that himself. We did get a stamped, signed letter from Paul Brogna detailing all of this and explaining what he found on site and also what the property owner was going to be taking for steps. Paul was unavailable now. He's away for, sort of for a long weekend, said that if there's anything that needs to be done, as soon as he gets back, he'll be in contact with us, or if we need him to do anything immediately. But the letter basically says that he expects, the letter we got, I believe, 2 days ago, says that he expects that the site will be fully stable within 7 to 10 days. The property owner had contracted a company to come in and do the erosion control, the silt sock that gets blown straight out of the truck. So I guess in general, my point is that the property owner has taken steps in the right direction, has shown a commitment to getting this done, but I believe did have a bit of a late start on this. Could he have called my office as soon as something was put on the door and somebody called him and told him about it? Absolutely. But the point of enforcement is compliance, and I believe he is moving in the right direction for that. So my recommendation would be to change the deadline on those first two to the day before the following meeting, March 12th. We have not seen any evidence of release from the site, which is good. I think some people have been lucky that we haven't gotten catastrophic rains. We've had some decent rainstorms since this event happened, and we don't have any evidence of any sediment reaching the bay, which is good. So that's my recommendation on this. Commission can do whatever they want, but I think when you have somebody who's moving in the right direction, rather than fining them for being late on those first two, I think moving that would be appropriate.
And moving to May 12th, not March 12th, correct?
Yes.
For receiving.
Yeah, I don't want to go in the past. Sorry.
Hey, it's a good trick, you can do it.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I would, but just myself.
Commissioners, do we have any comments? All right. Do I hear a motion to change the deadline in the enforcement order as voted last meeting to
May 12th.
May 12th for installation of erosion and sediment controls as described in submission of a letter from a PE stating that these controls will sufficiently protect coastal wetland resource areas.
I'll make the motion.
All right, we have a motion from Kalina. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries 5-0 to extend. All right, we will now discuss 6 Prospect Street. Matt, could you brief us?
Yes.
6 or 9?
6.
The agenda says 9.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry, let me rifle through my paperwork. So, April 13th, town planner saw an excavator working in a hole near the paved entrance to the property at 6 Prospect Street. Worker in the hole and pumps sending water down pipes and hoses into the banks of Smelt Brook, causing severe sedimentation of the brook. She asked where their permits were, informed the workers the Conservation Department was on their way after calling me. By the time I was on site around 12:30, workers were gone, the excavator was parked. Val was in a discussion with Brian Eck, owner of JMC Supply, a business registered on site at 6 Prospect Street. Brian's here tonight. On site with Brian, said a few things, one of which was that what he was doing, and he can speak to this, was there's a granite culvert that carries Smelt Brook from Foundry Pond Dam, which is also on the property, underneath the parking lot or paved area and daylights on the downstream side of the property. Apparently that culvert had collapsed about 6 months ago. On site, Brian had said that DEP had mandated that he do work there. I sort of explained that even if that was the case, you still need permitting. If a state agency requires you to do something, then you're eligible for emergency orders of conditions, which can get you getting started with the work, right away, but allows the work to be done legally. I sort of explained to Brian why this would need permitting and what the commission would want to see in a situation like this, which essentially would be engineer review and planning to make sure that something is put back together correctly. And also just sort of discuss the liability of if you put something like this back together and it's not stable and then somebody falls in with a truck or something in the future, that you're then liable for that. I've since followed up with DEP. DEP said that the only communication's been from the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup. This was a factory for a long, long time. There was a big EPA cleanup here back in, I think, the 80s into the early 90s. They didn't clean the whole site. I think they just removed everything that was above ground. There were a lot of tanks and vats and lots of noxious chemicals left behind when the factory was abandoned. But in recent years, DEP had something about a release on site, and they had been communicating with Brian on that. Important to note that the property ownership is really odd for the commission. It's not your typical situation. I don't know that I can accurately brief the commission entirely on ownership, because I'm sure Brian would tell something of a different story on this, but from the best I can tell, years ago, the Cobb and Drew company that used to run the dam, or the factory there, just stopped production and sort of walked from the site. They sold it to a company called Credit Recovery Services, which I think was based out of Florida. From what I have heard locally, Credit Recovery Services sort of took what they could from the property that was worth anything, sold it, and never paid any taxes on the property, and just sort of disappeared. The Eck family, years ago, from my understanding, paid back taxes on the property and started to occupy the property. Brian said that he's now considered by DEP to be an occupant of the property. So from an ownership standpoint, we don't have clear ownership. There was a land court case started by Brian's father years ago. And Brian mentioned that his father's lawyers had sort of told him, like, you don't really necessarily want to chase that down, because then you're going to be responsible for anything that's going wrong with this site. So what we have now, ownership aside, is Brian had done this work there that is not legal from a permitting standpoint, and is also a clear enforcement issue based on the sedimentation. He had sort of said, I'm just taking water from one side of the brook and putting it in the other, but that's not really accurate based on the digging and everything. And then even on the downslope side, the way that the water is coming out of the pipes is causing sedimentation as it is. So we had a pretty big release of sediment into Smelt Brook from this site. I can't tell necessarily the scale of it, but based on just what we saw on site and what's in the photos of the brook itself, downstream, it was significant sedimentation. So from the commission standpoint, sort of what I told him is, the commission's not necessarily looking to punish people, but you want things to be done right. So from my standpoint on this is something the commission would want repaired, and want repaired correctly. So you can have Brian come up and speak to this too. He had a lot of concerns about the financial impact of something like this, especially when he feels he doesn't actually own the property. But I sort of explained that once you got an excavator into this situation and started digging, in a way you own, from the wetlands standpoint, what comes next. Had you contacted my office 6 months ago when that collapsed, that's something that maybe just happened on its own from the structure being old. And that might be something that we could help, them work on, and try to coordinate something with a state agency to see if it's something that could be done under an emergency authorization, or at least to work on trying to find a way to get that fixed. But I think at this point, we have an enforcement issue. Now we have not only a collapsed culvert, but we have an open pit. I mean, while I was there on site, parts of it were collapsing, just dirt, from the sides of the pit sort of calving in there. So you could see in one of the pictures that I took facing downstream that there's a significant portion of pavement there that is undermined as is. It's not ideal from a safety standpoint or a wetlands protection standpoint right now. He also mentioned that the culvert in between where he was digging and the daylighted side is clogged. I can't confirm that. When I was there, water was actually flowing in the upstream direction into the hole, I believe, because the hole had been pumped out. And that may be indicative of there being a clog down there, and that's why everything was flowing back, or it may have simply been a matter of everything being quickly, drained down by pumps. I don't know. So there's obviously issues here and issues that need to be fixed. It's an odd property. I couldn't get town council here tonight to just kick a couple of things off of him, early on, just because I thought maybe he'd have some awareness of this situation or of this property or something. But yeah, if you want to hear maybe what Brian has to say. Otherwise, the only thing I could really think on this is issuing I think what the commission would typically do in this situation, you'd issue an enforcement order. You would want the filing of an NOI to fix the problem. And you'd want to set a date for that filing, and you'd want to set a date for the completion of the problem as well. Because you don't want somebody to file an NOI and then have that be it, and then they've satisfied that. So that's about the only advice I have on this one, but yeah.
Would you like to come up? Have you signed? Yes. Just please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Brian Eck, representing 6 Prospect Street in Kingston. And just to touch base on what Matt talked about, it is a complex situation with many years' history, and I'll try to make it as brief as possible and try and explain it to everyone so that kind of everyone understands what we're dealing with down there and what I'm kind of dealing with on my end. But really just to explain it in 2 different situations. To start with the property, just at 6 Prospect Street. I mean, it's a MILF that was designed to run on water back in 1848. There's an active waterfall there. It runs through the building. It ran to 1901 on water, but they switched to diesel. But like Matt said, it got abandoned back in around 1990, and my family, it sat abandoned and was, a hazard and whatnot. So from my research, you got to understand my parents, it was 1997 when they took the property over, so I was 15 years old. So my father passed in 2019, so he handled this property. So at that time, I did meet with the town planner, Valerie, but I needed to get obviously educated on the property because we don't have title, we don't own it. There is underlying environmental issues with the property. As Matt said, there was a massive cleanup, but there's also still issues with the property. So my parents did spend a lot of money, trying to get clean title, working with the town over the years. And quite frankly, since 2019, my dad passing, it's now 2026, I've obviously learned a lot about the property and feel that it needs to be addressed in some way. There's no I've talked to people in the town, and I'm obviously here for the situation at hand, which is the sinkhole in our parking lot, but also just to bring to the town's attention, this board, of the situation. And I am working with Valerie, the town planner, to seek funding because there's more issues than just the sinkhole. After I met with Valerie and my dad's passing, the DEP did contact me roughly a year later, and they wanted the property to get compliant with various issues. So we've spent close to $70,000 personally, put a lot of money into the property to keep it from falling down. There was a lot of structural issues. To be frank, again, it's kind of a nightmare for me because I'm trying to keep a property afloat while not having title or permits to do any type of real lucrative business or something that could be mutually beneficial for the community, myself, and the town. So the last few years I've spent the time doing the research, putting in the time to understand so that when I could go to Valerie with some type of proposal or potential partnership on the situation, because leaving it where there's no owner and we're neglected down there, it's not a win for anybody, you know, myself or the town. So we are trying to now seek funding, because not only do we have the sinkhole that is addressed tonight, but there's issues with the property, with the structural part and the dam, the waterfall. There's a lot of potential things. So we do have plans to progress with that. But, so that's kind of just to touch base on the property and where it lies as far as ownership, the struggles, how we're going to try to seek funding. Obviously, I've had people, developers interested, but my father did not want to ever, and the neighbors did not want to seek that route, because that route always involved us getting squeezed out and housing being put in there, where it was my dad's wishes, and our family feels the same way, that if we could take, and it's a challenge, but if we could take the existing site, it's got a lot of history to it, the buildings are structurally, we've secured them, where we can conserve that property and lean into the history and also the environment there, because you have a tremendous wildlife between the 4.5 acres and the abutting property next to us. So the opportunities are endless between the property and what we could do for the environment, but we don't have funding, we don't have ownership, and we have a sinkhole. The other issues I've been able to take care of, you know, over the years. My parents have done that, but this sinkhole, and to now touch base on that we didn't bring in an excavator, we didn't try to do any work. We found a sinkhole in the parking lot, and we used the backhoe on site that my dad had, and 1986 backhoe. We pried open to investigate what the sinkhole was, and we found there's an old, I mean, I don't have the knowledge of the style, but it's an old style tunnel where they, instead of using concrete or things we would use nowadays, they basically built 2 walls on either side, and they capped it with big long pieces of granite. And when we dug to see what the sinkhole was, one of those pieces of granite were broken and caved in with sediment and dirt going into the tunnel. And where you see it now is we had to open that up, and we found all that dirt that caved in went down the stream roughly 6 to 10 feet underneath the driveway, and it was, and where Matt said the water was flowing backwards, there's only about 4 feet of clearance from bottom to top, and there's dirt almost all the way up, only leaving about a foot or so of space for water to get out. So all we knew was that needed to be that dirt needed to be cleaned out before we could fix anything to keep the flow of water, because that water's now flooding and pulling dirt into that channel and breaking more of the roof, and we got ourselves a problem, So until that dirt is out of that tunnel, the water isn't flowing properly. Now, I did go, but prior to doing that, we tried looking to see if there was good access through the river, which that has been neglected. I don't think anyone's ever touched that, but I physically pulled out more trash and boards than you can imagine. So we did clean that river out to hope the flow would help, but that clog that's underneath has really hardened over I don't know how many years. It could mean, like I said, the property's been there since 1848, so, you know, you could have 50 years of build-up there, but, so I'm left now where I'm very concerned because we have a hole there, no way to fix it, and, you know, it's getting worse, so, I don't really know exactly what the solution would be tonight, but I think it's good to just introduce the property, our intention, what we want to do with it, and the problem to see, you know, if people have ideas. Now, Val's been a big help and thinks there's potential to connect that situation with the situation on 3A, because that river does go under 3A by the Charlie Horse, and that's restricted a little bit, I know, and also that there's issues with tides coming in. So that's going to be our approach for now, but again, being that I took this on and I have only so many resources and I'm in this situation, we're obviously looking not to put this problem on any specific person or group, but we could definitely use help with the situation, and the more, you know, we can collaborate to find solutions is what we're trying to do, because having that hole there and having the property sit there and not do anything in this town, I mean, that's not good for anybody. So we definitely want to get on it. It's been a long time coming, obviously, but as Matt said, the history is so difficult, and how much time and effort we've already put into it and had lack of success taking it over, that, you know, we're in a precarious situation as well. But that's why, I mean, those pictures, we were trying to get, we identified that there was a break in the tunnel, and we were trying to get access down there to get that unclogged, you know, and I didn't know, you know, obviously I'm learning here and I'm here tonight, but that special permits to clean that out were required, but certainly we don't have the money to structurally do that in today's standards of engineering. And, you know, again, if you go back and work your way back towards the pond, you also have a waterfall and a dam there as well that is in good shape now, but I can't predict the future on that as well. So I think, you know, it would definitely be in everyone's best interest to work on a plan. You know, Val and I are leading it, but to get this property under control, under proper ownership, and develop it, and not have it a sit-in eyesore that's a liability to anyone else. But that's, like I said, I appreciate it. I know it's long-winded, but it's a lot. You know, it's not your average situation, and you know, I hate to just see it knocked down and turned into, I know housing is a topic, but, you know, there's a lot of wildlife and history to that property, and there's potential where, you know, if there was zoning leniency or, you know, things like that, that you could do profitable businesses with the space. So you don't have to just rip it all down and, you know, kind of do the typical development that you see at these properties. But
All right.
anyway,
Brian.
that's just my summary of what's going on down there.
All right, we're going to open it up.
Can I just do one
Go ahead.
one thing? That
Yep, go ahead, Matt.
Brian just reminded me, he was talking about the waterfall and the condition of it. So a little ways back, DCR's Office of Dam Safety contacted the town with serious concerns about Foundry Pond Dam, which is on this property.
Before or after the hole?
Before. Well, before, yeah. I mean, the culvert apparently has been collapsed for 6 months, but before this enforcement issue.
Oh, and you can see, I didn't even realize it, but you can see the dirt, that's the clog, and it goes back. So we were trying to get the water low enough to
Yep.
get that out.
Thank you. Just do me a favor, just sit for a second, and then we'll come back when we're ready, all right?
So before the enforcement issue, they reached out to the town saying they had concerns and that they haven't been able to contact any owner of the property or anyone who was utilizing the property that was willing to respond to them. They said they believed that the dam was privately owned and abandoned, and requested our assistance in accessing the parcel so that they could inspect the dam. According to their records, the dam has not been inspected since 1998, and the unknown condition poses a public safety concern. After April 13th, I made ODS aware of the culvert collapse because the culvert is connected to the dam, and I figured they should be aware of the potential for any failure in the system, being that this part collapsed. So they responded by asking that they be made aware of any site visit the town may schedule so that they could be on the property to take a look at the dam. And that was one thing that I did put in my recommendations was, obviously you'd want something like this fixed as quickly as possible. But regardless, if you issued an enforcement order tonight, it's still gonna sit like this for a while. The commission, if they wanted to go see the site, could schedule a site visit to inspect the property, although I wouldn't obviously recommend walking particularly close to the open hole, but it may give some perspective on this. And the commission could wish to invite ODS and DEP to the site visit to ensure that no public safety concerns are ignored relative to the dam, culvert, or recent unpermitted work. And just to that note, outside of wetlands concerns, I don't know if, like, from a safety standpoint, there should be some sort of barrier or something, because there's probably I can't imagine somebody driving into that, but
I can't.
I don't know.
I can.
I mean, people do some pretty dumb things, and then there's the
Yeah.
capacity for, like, kids or something to get in there and mess around. I don't know. It just seems like at a minimum there should be something like enclosing that. So I drove by today and the gate was open, and there's nothing. It looks basically like it does right now. So that's a non-wetlands note, is that it probably should have some sort of safety barrier around there. But yeah, that was my recommendation. Was commission may want to schedule a site visit and have those state agencies look at that dam and surrounding infrastructure, and obviously the commission's going to want stabilization of this somehow.
All right, we'll open it up to commission. Is there any, you want to open up to the public? See if there's anything else. Anyone else? Pine has her hands up. Pine?
Hi, how are you? Sorry, it's been so long since for this to be going on. I was kind of the responsible party back in the way back times, 30 years plus, to call this place out for hazardous waste because it had been abandoned. So I was on one of my little walks through Kingston, and what we're talking about is Smelt Brook. So Smelt Brook, flows out of Smelt Pond. It flows through this property to the Jones River estuary. I would assume that it's cold water fishery. We know that there are trout that would be going up there if there wasn't a 10-foot high dam. So the dam we're talking about is 10 feet high. And in my recollection, it's boards, so those boards could be removed. And the water, the Smelt Brook, flows through the building, which, when it was abandoned, I walked through and noticed the immense amount of poisons that were flowing into Smelt Brook. So my concern here is that what you're talking about is a hazardous waste site, not just a collapsed culvert, and that it's likely that the sediment and et cetera, is contaminated, and it should be tested so that you know what you're dealing with, and whether there can be some filtration and continue to go to Smelt Brook in the estuary, or whether it needs some other kind of treatment. When we were dealing with it, there were tanks of all kinds of things that were used. This place was, they dyed things, they machined things. It was a factory, and you should really look at that, but understand that you're not just talking about a culvert collapse. You're talking about a whole network of industrial past that really needs to be looked at. So, a site visit would reveal an awful lot, and, but you shouldn't just look at the, stare in the hole, you know what I mean? And I would really ask that you do some tests to know whether there's residual, because when the site was cleaned up, they cleaned up the superficial stuff, you know, the tanks and the contaminants that were available on the surface. I don't recall there being a real serious investigation of the site, so.
Yeah, I don't think there's been anything subsurface on this
Yeah,
site.
I would, you know, I think that's overdue, but, you know, you might at least want to look at what's in that, the collapse of the culvert, before people start putting their hands in it, you know, and so on, and releasing it downstream. I'm interested in this site. I feel for Brian, you know, and the work that he's both put into trying to make it something and whatnot. I think, though, that, you know, it's one of the mistakes of the town process where, you know, it really, it was a, you know, tax grab. It wasn't really done right from the town's perspective. So there's a lot to learn from this site, and there's a lot to do here, and it's not simple. And if there's anything that Jones River Watershed Association can do to assist or participate in, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Looks like Valerie has her hands up. Val, could you unmute yourself and let us know?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to echo Pine's comments and also Brian's comments, and that it's a situation that is really complex from everyone's perspective, and ownership is very difficult to establish. We're not clear that the town ever had ownership. There was debt, definitely, that was involved. And so I'm trying to approach this and talking with Mr. Eck in terms of a partnership and in terms of mutual interests, because we do have an interested party that's operating the site, and the town has a lot of interest in terms of trying to make sure that the site is remediated and safe, and also if there is a chance to redevelop the site in a way that makes sense for the community, makes sense for the property, that's definitely in our best interest. So I would support trying to bring in these other agencies to take a look, because the difficulty we have whenever we reach out to the state or other agencies to seek assistance is ownership. Without clear ownership, we don't have a solution. So we all need to work together on this because it is so complex. And as Matt mentioned, we have asked town council to engage with us on that conversation. And so I just wanted to echo those comments and hear if there's any further questions.
All right, thank you.
I can read off something quickly that I haven't touched on in terms of contamination and in terms of, again, safety, if you.
Please.
So, reading through some of the DEP, the recent DEP Bureau of Waste Site cleanup information from the site, talked about in December 2024, groundwater samples yielded 2 detections of cadmium, 1 detection of thallium that exceeded reportable concentrations. It goes on to say, human receptors at the site are currently limited to on-site employees and occasional clients. The potential human exposure pathways include incidental ingestion and absorption of soil, which has elevated concentrations of metals and PAHs. I don't know what those are. Potential exposure to contaminated soil by adult workers could occur during the loading or unloading of trucks, during yard work, or if earth excavation work was needed for utilities or construction. Dust may be generated during future construction activities, thus posing an inhalation pathway. But specifically just talking about the earth excavation work, I don't know if any of this is relevant to the site that that you had somebody digging in, and I know there was somebody that was there in the hole at one point or another when Val was there, but there is potential for exposure to a human in there, and I don't think I saw a great amount of PPE in the photos. We don't know if what's in there is contaminated or not for soil. We don't know if the water that was in there was contaminated, that was then pumped downstream, but it may have a high likelihood based on the site history. So from what Pine said, I think is right from a commission standpoint. There should be concerns about that. It's just a matter of what the commission wants to do about it now going forward. I can certainly coordinate with waste site cleanup to see if there's any assessment of this particular area, or if they can send somebody down to take a look at this stuff. But again, I think a site visit where we ask them to be there would also be a good idea.
All right, just to start the discussion somewhere, I can hear that there's a long frustrating history with this parcel and the ownership and all that stuff. I'm sure it's tough for the people involved, but what we have in front of us is a simple action, right? There was an action, there was disturbance to the actual resource area, not the buffer zone, and there was no permits pulled. So I think that we are looking at enforcement. I think it's clear. I think that's where we have to start from. And then from there, I think we need to compel this to be restored in a kind of a temporary manner. We need to bring this back to, I guess, the baseline that it existed before this disturbance, and then maybe there's actions after that that need to become. But I think that we don't wait on this one. I think we just issue an enforcement order and compel them to move forward with NOI to address the gaping hole with the water running into the area from, washing down the sediment, the soil, whatever else is contained in that soil, in a site that may be compromised subsurface. So I think that that's really where we need to be, but I'm open to discussion.
I think there needs to be an examination of the contamination there first, before anything gets done. If it's,
Before the work gets done, but I think
Yeah,
we
but-
start with enforcement order.
that's immaterial at this
It's-
point.
we have to start.
If that's a contaminated site, nobody wants to be there until it's surveyed, looked at, what's there, how much, what kind of equipment do we need to help clean it up. This is a very complex problem.
Right.
This is not just a hole in the parking lot.
Absolutely.
And if he doesn't own the land and can't afford to fix it,
I think that's immaterial at this point. There's an event that already took place. We have to move forward with.
I know, but with caution. You can't say, fix that hole.
I'm
if-
not
if-
advocating, I'm saying NOI. I'm not even saying fix the hole. I'm saying NOI to determine what the correct
Right,
path
but
is.
you need engineers to get in there
Yeah.
and determine how you fix that. If it's contaminated, where do you start? You might not start with the hole.
Right. But if we don't start by issuing an enforcement order
Yeah,
tonight
you can do that.
with
but-
dates attached to it for the
I
filing.
I wouldn't even put dates on it. For safeties, I would get an engineer to say, how do you cover it and make it safe from somebody falling in or driving in?
Can I add one thing to this conversation? While you're thinking about these things from a wetlands protection standpoint, there's apparently some issue with the flow down there. Again, I have not confirmed that. But if there is an issue down there where the water is not flowing through there adequately, then that likely increases the chances of further structural issues with the dam, with the culvert, potentially with the building, and probably increases the chance of even more contamination getting into the system through things backing up and either breaking and releasing, or backing up and finding another way around that route it through more contaminated soil.
Bring more water where it may not otherwise exist.
It, just making the point that it might, from a wetlands protection standpoint, it may not be as simple as like
fixing the hole.
cover up the hole
Right.
so that
Well-
it's safe to public and people on site, but like, that may not
That
may
whole
not solve an
system
issue from
needs to be
wetlands.
opened up and examined.
I don't
Oh.
think we can cover that, we can't just cover this hole up. This is-
Well, and not forever, no. No, but there's such a potential there for damage to the wetlands by releasing more, when that clog is undone, God knows where stuff's gonna go.
The pictures that were in there, it looked like there was a lot of silt coming through the, am I wrong? That there was still water washing out the end of the culvert at the daylight.
There was a lot of silt based on the pumping from the hole.
Yeah, I saw it washing down the bank,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But was the water moving, was it
I
or is it
couldn't
coastal?
see-
I don't know how.
I couldn't
far away.
see, it also was a little bit blocked up. There was material put in the way of that on the downstream side, so it wasn't as easy to see that. I can just kind of pull through the pictures again and
What
pull
part
something
of the
up.
state comes in and examines for contaminated soil?
Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup is who's involved with the property right now, which is part
They
of,
are,
part
okay.
of DEP. So they're already aware, they've already issued.
Okay.
So as he said, they've had to put money already into doing a phase one on the
Okay.
property. I just don't know if that has dealt
Phase
with
one's
this
just
particular
above
area.
ground though, right?
I believe,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the visual.
They did
what's-
wells and did testing.
You'll have to go back up there if you talk.
Yeah, we tried to take a proactive stance before this sinkhole and work with the DEP to find out. They kind of said, hey, you know, you don't own the property, but you need to begin the process in figuring out exactly what she said, what's going on down there. And that was something that took me a few years to decide, because it was a lot of money, but we went through with it, because they said, whatever happens, we need to know what is dirty down there and what's not. So we spent the money to have all the wells installed by Cooperstown Engineering, and that's where Matt's getting those testing. And the DEP hasn't decided, because they did find some chemicals to be slightly higher than the norm, but they didn't know how they would act on it, because it wasn't enough to be they said a safety hazard to us to be down there, because I was concerned. You know, I've been down there for a long time. And then we're in the middle of transitioning to a phase two, which is not on the calendar. They requested until 2028, but with this sinkhole now kind of accelerating the problems down there, that's kind of where, you know, I just feel a little over my head now at this point, so. But there was testing, so that, you know, if anyone needs that record of what was found in the soils, and they did wells throughout the whole property.
Okay, thank you.
Here's, Jim, the picture up on the screen of sort of what you're asking about. So you have one of the piped outputs there coming down the slope, and you can see that the brook itself is pretty heavy with sediment, and there's a blockage there on the down. That's basically what you're looking at there, is the downstream opening of the culvert where Smelt Brook daylights.
Yeah, and it looks like they tried to dam it up on the back section, because that's the outlet, correct?
That is the outlet, so yeah, I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, if it's to keep things from swimming up into it or something along those lines. But I couldn't document whether there was flow coming out of there, and like I said, when I was standing at the hole looking downstream, water was slowly trickling back into the hole from the culvert.
Is this coastal, Matt?
It is coastal,
could that
yeah,
be
I don't
flow?
know if that could be,
I don't know what this is.
if it could have been a tidal, I don't know how far up the tidal reach is, it probably does reach to here, I would think.
Can
Do you know
I
if
address?
Oh, sorry, Pine, do you know?
I'm sorry, yes, Smelt used to congregate there, if I have this area correct. So it does, the tidal, you know, the rise in the tide does move all the way under 3A and up into this area. Can I add anything else? I think that the sediment is coming from the washout, right? It's not coming from Foundry Pond. So if there's a way to pipe, like we did with the dam diversion, when we were doing the dam removal, to take the water and to pipe it around there and prevent the tide from going up in there, you might avoid any, downstream contamination, which is an issue right now because this is fish migration season. We have herring up in Silver Lake, we have eels we're counting, and certainly there's smelt in the river, and we've been trying to bring them back. So if there's a way that we can act quickly to, avoid the erosive, the sediment must be coming from the breach in the culvert. In other words, it's from that area that's the area of contamination concern. So if you can pipe the flow from Foundry around that area and discharge it, to the downstream portion of Smelt Brook, you buy yourself a lot of time and the ability to work in the area.
You'd still probably want to have an engineer, right? You
Yeah,
can't-
this isn't something that the Conservation Commission.
But it is, to her point, I have had an EPO tell me that they've seen like immense amounts of eels congregating in this spot right here. Not this year, but it just, first thing I thought of when I saw all this was that this is the time of year where your young eels are trying to move up, and it's not ideal at, from a standpoint.
I've counted about 1,000 of them up by Silver Lake already.
So, if I may, this is Val jumping in. A question for Mr. Eck would be, are you open to having a meeting where we can bring in some of these other agencies that might be involved in talking about the things we're talking about today? Like, they might be able to give us some suggestions on what needs to be done and perhaps help us with the issue of funding. I'm not clear, if we've agreed to try to, allow access, but I think that would help us from a perspective of trying to facilitate conversation with these agencies about the need and now the pressing need to try to address some of these issues.
No, absolutely, because it's connected, because, and I went back in our history, obviously you see sediment coming in from the hole, but over the years, the water table in Foundry Pond has greatly increased due to development, and we've noticed a lot of sediment over the years coming in, so between us noticing that, the sinkhole, and if you look at that picture with the wetlands, that was in really rough shape. We've cleaned out some of it, but I don't think any of it's been addressed properly in a very long time. So, and I think getting some people that have knowledge on this would be a logical next step.
All right, thank you. Matt? This is Conservation Commission, we're not engineers, we're not, and this is even something that most engineers probably wouldn't want to touch. There's gonna be a lot of things involved, and there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be sitting at that table who aren't us. From what I can see, we need an enforcement order issued compelling next actions. Next actions is to file an NOI for the work and to pursue that aggressively by putting dates on it. Do you agree, do you disagree? What else do we need to do at this point? We can write whatever language we want to compel, compliance and to make sure that we're inviting the state people in. But at this point, we have an open hole, it's unsafe. We can't close it because it needs to be permitted and it needs to be designed and constructed in a way that won't affect the area long term.
I guess I would say if you're requiring an NOI for that, it doesn't necessarily have to be, and this may get a little bit to Dot's point, that it doesn't have to be to fix what collapsed or what was dug. It could be to do either that or to bypass it entirely and stabilize that so that there's no direct wetland impact. So to Pine's point,
Would
piping from Foundry Pond to Smelt
bypassing
Brook
the whole brook?
would bypass not the whole brook, would bypass the section of brook that goes under a building and under a parking lot
Doesn't
and
the
through
whole
the
thing flow
collapse.
through there?
The whole,
The whole brook flows through there.
from the dam to the edge of the pavement. So what you're doing, and I believe it's a pretty long run, but it would give an engineer basically a couple of options. And one option has to deal with what's in the ground, right? Because if you're rebuilding what's in there, the first step you want to know is what's contaminated in there, how are we going to deal with this? The other option is completely bypass it all by piping water from Foundry Pond directly to the daylighted section of Smelt Brook in a way that limits sedimentation. And in the meantime, while everything on this property is being figured out, you're not having any detrimental impacts to the wetland resources. Because right now, fish are not getting through Smelt Brook
I completely understand.
past the dam into the pond, so there's really no detriment from a wetland standpoint in completely bypassing that section. Like Pine said, we just can't
But you
just go,
bypass
hey,
it
go
with
do
pumps.
that. Like, but you're not necessarily, if it's, you know, and that's where an engineer could make, you know, whatever calculations they need to make, because you wouldn't necessarily need pumps based on elevation, topography, pressure, things like that. So I think it could be possible, and it could be something that an
So they
engineer
would
could
just
look
run it
at.
underwater for a
You'd run it-
sufficient distance to build up ahead?
And again, it may not be possible at all, because they may need to run it to the side of the parking lot up where it might be a little bit of a higher elevation, and then it just doesn't work, and then you would need a pump. But if it's possible, that could be, you know, I would think a quicker, easier option of not having to deal with a couple 100-year-old infrastructure that's collapsed and potential for contamination to be disturbed, or to have workers working around contamination, and to have water continually flushing through contamination when you could bypass the water around it, if that's feasible.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Tonight, enforcement order, I don't want, personally, I don't want any work going on. I want it made safe. I want site fencing up around the hole. I want next steps to be mandated, that it needs to be considered and planned by the right people, involve the state, because they have the stakeholders, involve JWRA, involve you. We need something that moves us in the right direction. Us just saying bypass it, I don't even know that that's the right thing at this point in time.
Yeah.
You guys sit down, but if we don't give an enforcement order, compelling action to include X, Y, and Z, I don't think we get anywhere tonight. So tonight, I think the only thing that we can do is issue the enforcement order and to require certain milestones in the process to be reached by date certain, or else we're just gonna be here in 2 weeks, and then in 4 weeks, and then 6 weeks, and 8 weeks, and at some point, maybe there will be some kind of action, but it sounds like there's gonna be a money issue here too, so if we get this started today, we're 2 weeks ahead of next week and 4 weeks ahead of maybe, and by the time we're done with this, it could be 4 months ahead of, you know, wherever we end up.
Yeah, I guess I hear that and understand it completely, and then there's the other side of it, which is that rather than issuing something tonight, issuing it 2 weeks from now allows the commission and staff to be more deliberate about it and coordinate more with council and with DEP on some of this, because if it was a situation like some of the other recent enforcements we've had where you want a site to be stabilized ASAP and that can be done within 2 or 3 weeks physically, then it's worth jumping on it immediately. And sometimes I feel like I should issue those EOs before we even get to the hearing. But in this situation, while this is kind of, it's really not good the way that everything is left right now. Regardless of whether the commission issues an EO tonight or 2 weeks from now, I don't think you're seeing anything change on the ground there for months because of all of the work that's going to be involved in assessing it correctly and permitting.
But the EO is to compel that to start tonight.
I understand that, but to get the EO to be specific enough for what, you know what I mean? We can definitely issue that tonight. If we issue it 2 weeks from now, maybe we can get the language a little better than we would get it tonight.
But if I
All right,
can,
no, you can wait, please. Tonight, we can issue an enforcement order confirming the stop work, right? Making it safe by requiring site fence to be built, meaning that nobody else will be there, and nobody can touch that. That doesn't help us with anything that's not gonna be helped if we don't issue an enforcement order.
Right.
But at least we did something tonight to say, make it safe, and that's it. No touching, I want 10-foot perimeter around the entire hole, and I want that site fencing constructed and maintained until we get to next steps, and then the next one, we do with an enforcement order, and we can write all the pretty stuff that we want.
And to be honest, you could add to that the hiring of an engineer to begin reviewing
Perfect.
the site.
Yep.
You're not mandating a filing or an end result, but you are saying we want to see you hire somebody to start looking at this towards the end of fixing this
And to
wetlands
provide
issue.
access for the stakeholders that, and let's coordinate an on-site meeting, yeah?
Yeah.
So we have three things, one sec, please. Hang on one sec, please. So 3 items there, Matt?
Hold on, let me start a fresh page. You want site safety fencing.
10-foot perimeter around, do not touch zone around the whole. Silk fence around the whole, the fence. Silk sock around the fence. Stop anything from washing into that area.
Second?
Second was engage PE to oversee corrective actions. And then third, however we want to write it up, to provide access for the stakeholders, invite the state, all the people who need to be involved with something like this magnitude.
You're talking state, local government?
Yep. And then we want to follow up 2 weeks.
What's your date for all of this to be done?
I want a follow-up response with, if these things haven't taken place, I want the site fencing up within that, I want it done by the next meeting. And if the planning can't be done because of the stakeholders, then that's a meeting that can take place. But we want to know that there was action and an update. Other thoughts? Brian, you don't have to, just,
Want to raise my hand?
I'm always turned this way. This is a group, that we are all equal here,
I
so speak.
want to question the authority of the commission to issue enforcement orders related to public safety. If the 10-foot fence is there to prevent individuals from harming themselves to the sinkhole, I want to know what our jurisdictional authority is there. But if the fence is there to prevent continual
Disturbance.
yeah, into the area that would continue to
Nuisance.
pollute the wetlands,
Yep.
then
It's an attractive nuisance, so therefore, anything that could come from that, kids crawling on the bank,
so
knocking it over
the
further.
trying to
getting trapped.
restrict access to the sinkhole is related to our desire to protect the wetland,
Right.
not related to a desire to protect
No more
public
disturbance
safety.
of that opening, which
Just
is.
want to make it
which
clear
is-
that that's the rationale behind the fence, to ensure that this commission has the jurisdiction to do
Well,
something like that.
we well within our jurisdiction.
I was thinking that as I was writing it, that
Okay,
like
I
I
just
have
wanna
talked
make sure
about a
that the
few
record-
public safety things tonight that I'm just saying because
Right.
we're talking about this now, but that I would see
I think
as,
the
we
record
don't
needs
want
to be
that to
clear
get
that
worse.
the rationale for our action is to protect the environment.
There is a direct correspondence by the number of times somebody walks up and down that bank.
Right.
And this getting worse.
Right,
So.
right.
the
I
last
agree
thing
with
we
that. I
want
just
is
want to make
more
sure that's
getting
clear in the
worse.
record. that that's
Because
the
right now,
rationale.
from what I could see in the images, it sounds like we get some flow backwards, or else they wouldn't have tried to stop the sediment from running uphill. So it's coastal. It's moving, there is some movement. I don't know how impeded it is beyond that, but the more you disturb it manually, the more it's gonna, sand that's gonna run down, the more that's gonna wash down. And as it gets eroded underneath, it's gonna, you know, that pavement's only gonna hold for so long, and then it's gonna give way and block forever. So we don't
Yeah, I
want
think
anybody
we
there, we
get
don't want
that.
traffic.
You just want to make sure that Matt's language is clear.
All right, so we have 3 points on this so far. Is that enough for tonight? Or everybody clear with that? Okay. Matt? You clear?
Yeah, you're saying by May 13th, you want to see the perimeter fencing with silt sock.
I want to see the fencing done. They could literally get that done in a day. I want it done. I want to see pictures of it complete with the silt sock. The rest is work in progress, but we want to report on that, and we want at least an engagement letter for the engineer saying that there is engagement and that they're working.
And as far as access for stakeholders, I mean, we talked about doing a site visit. Is the commission interested in doing a site visit on the property, or are we just talking about stakeholders with, you know, staff and DEP and all that stuff?
We can go anywhere.
I'll schedule it with, so basically what I'm thinking here is I would say we're going to schedule a site visit, and we're going to invite ODS, we're going to invite DEP, and whatever the date we schedule it, I will invite the commission. Rather than to try to work around all of your schedules and then working with everybody else. It will be the way we do some of the other site visits, where we just schedule it, let you know when it is. If you can make it, great. If not, you'll have staff notes from the meeting. We're looking to do that meeting within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, time is important on this one, so we don't want to extend this out any further than can reasonably be achieved.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Got it.
All right. Do we want to continue discussion on this, or do we want to close for tonight? Close for tonight. All right, so I'm going to make the motion to issue the enforcement orders as we just worked through. Do I hear a second? Second by Dot. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. That advances 5-0. All right, so Matt will be in touch, Brian, okay? This is something that needs to get started, and the starting isn't just going with a backhoe and closing the hole. It's making sure we take all the steps necessary to make sure that we're not doing more harm than good. Okay, so there is a control process at this point. The enforcement action is just to tell you that there's a official path that we're gonna have to all stay on. Okay, it's not, we heard everything. We're not callous, we're just, it has to be done by the book at this point, okay? All right, Matt will be in touch, though, okay? All right, thank you for coming in, thank you for the job. All right, Matt.
Can we take 2 minutes before we hit 1 North?
We will take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
5 whole minutes, wow. Did you say that they wanted to develop?
Good? All right, we're coming back. 1 North Street, we're now here, a briefing from the conservation agent.
So, we had, going back in history, we had orders of conditions issued at this property in August of 2021 for a raised rebuild. The permit has not expired, work has been completed, owner is working to obtain an as-built plan and file for a COC. No vegetation work was included in the permit. About a year later, one of the conservation commissioners informed me that a landscape company had posted on a Facebook page showing vegetation trimming on the slope between the beach path and the beach at 1 North Street. Conservation Department visited the site, spoke with the owner, but did not bring the issue before the commission. Essentially, all they had done at that time was some pruning. They cut some of the shrubs down, but they hadn't removed anything. So we informed them there could be no further work in that area of the property and that stuff should be growing back, without further permitting from the commission. Couple months ago, I believe probably in the fall, could have been early spring, we were hearing something about cutting vegetation down there. We were around the corner, doing another site visit, just kind of keeping an eye on the area, but hadn't really confirmed anything. And then after the weekend of April 11th, we received multiple reports of vegetation removal at 1 North Street. And I called probably emailed the property owner and asked her to have a site visit with us to talk about it. We went down and had a site visit. The property owner said that she had asked her roommate not to cut or remove any plants in that area and had left for a long weekend, and when she came back, the area was cleared. Said she wasn't happy about it, that she had understood sort of what we had talked about before. Yeah, I had thought in a way we might be able to handle it the same way by just specifying an area that can't be touched. And when I saw it on site, it was worse than I'd anticipated. It wasn't just pruning, but it was actually like ripping things out. So there was a lot, and a lot of it may have just been grass, weeds, that sort of stuff. I mean, the area was primarily in a natural condition. It may have at one point or another been landscaped decades ago. It's hard to tell, but from my history on the property, it's been a coastal bank in a natural condition with a high proportion of invasive plants, but invasive plants provide stabilization too, just not as good as natives. So what we have now is the situation where some portion of the coastal bank or area just above the coastal bank has been destabilized. So I sort of told her at that point, we can't really take that in-house. That's got to go before the commission. I said you should work on stabilization as soon as you can and get with somebody who can put together a restoration plan on this. So a few days ago, we did get backing up. While we were on site, the owner spoke about wanting to put a gate in. There is this pathway here, and there's an area towards the right that goes down towards the beach on a little stairway. She wants to gate that so that people aren't walking down there, so she doesn't have the liability, and people instead can walk around the path. I told her she could file an RDA on that. So what we received a couple days ago is a plan that was put together by Grady Engineering with the filing of an RDA. The filing would be for that gate and 2 sections of fence with some plantings in front of it, and then the restoration planting of this area. So we have sort of 2 things on one plan there. So she has taken some steps here. I don't know about stabilization at all. That's still a concern. You would want to see stabilization there as soon as possible. But the commission could certainly issue an enforcement order requiring the restoration portion of that plan be implemented. I think I sort of wrote it out as the planting schedule portion. It's detailed in green on the plan that came with the RDA. And you'd also want to mandate stabilization with that as well.
All right, did we talk about Did we cover everything in this suggested motion?
Believe so, and
Did you
even.
talk about posts?
No, I didn't actually mention conservation posts, and I did mention that to her, that typically when you have these mitigation areas, and specifically where you have an area now where there's been activity in there multiple times, you would want conservation posts on that. If you're issuing an EO, you would put language in there about the long-term maintenance capacity of that. But I believe I also did recommend that that be put into any COC that's issued on the property. So when they do file for a COC, there's a little part where you talk about which special conditions would be perpetual. And I believe we could add something like this into that, just specifying that the conservation posts have to be there in perpetuity and that the management of that area follows our typical mitigation area management, where the intent is native vegetation. The intent is not to prune these plants so they can't grow and mulch them every year. Like, there can be a stabilization effort now when they're planted, but other than that, you want the plants to be allowed to grow and expand and fill the entire area and prevent things from getting down into the bay.
We'll open it up to commissioners' comments. All right, public, we'll open it up to the public. Would anyone like to be heard on this issue?
Hi, I'm the owner, can I speak?
Yes, you may. Please introduce yourself and give your address for the record.
I'm sorry, my name is Ann Antonellis, 1 North Street. Unfortunately, when I was away for that weekend, a person that lives at my house, he rents a room, said he was gonna just do some cleaning up of the yard. I came home and was shocked at what happened myself, and I think Matt knows that. And originally, when the first time happened way back before, some of the bushes that were there were being choked out by, what is it, what's the orange berry, Matt?
Bittersweet.
Thank you, bittersweet. And it was basically choking back some of the stuff, and that was what I originally was trying to just bring the bushes back. So that was the first time, and when Matt told me, I respected that. I did not respect that. So unfortunately, this person who thought he was helping wasn't helping, as we can see. I take it seriously. I want it to be natural looking. I don't want to ruin the bank. I respect, what's there. As soon as this happened, I literally got back, and I think you were here like that afternoon. I actually gave, or the next day, I think it was. I want to get it replanted the plan that Grady gave us. And, I just need help in knowing who as a landscaper, knows how to do this. That's one of my big concerns. But, I want to work with you guys to get everything done properly.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commission, do we have discussion? Matt's recommendation is a enforcement order mandating restoration of the disturbance area through implementation of the plant schedule portion of the landscape plan dated April 20th, 2026, to be completed by a date certain. The area to be protected with conservation posts and remain in natural condition in perpetuity. These should be added to perpetual conditions when the COC is issued. Is everybody on board with that? All right, do I hear a motion?
1 second.
Go
First, just the only part that I think I didn't wrap into all this is the stabilization. You want this site stabilized as soon as possible, or you at least want some form of erosion control or something there, and could speak to whether there's been anything done. I would doubt that she's had the ability to get anybody out there yet. Obviously, when somebody's doing this restoration planting, they're going to do this type of stabilization as part of that. But so you don't necessarily want to duplicate efforts if the restoration planting can happen quickly. But I'm sure it takes a little bit of time to get a contractor to get the plants to make sure, coordinate with my office that everything is to plan, and then get out there and do it. In the meantime, if we did get a large rain event, you might lose a good portion of soil there to the bay.
Well, honestly, sorry.
So I think, you
Matt,
know,
it's already growing back, just so you know, because it wasn't really taken out completely, and if you look at it now, there's already some of the old vegetation's already grown back, because it wasn't really ripped out completely.
Okay. It's still a lot
So-
of exposed dirt there. All right, so.
There is, yeah,
Yep.
sorry.
All right, so, and to Matt's point, what he was trying to communicate is that if you can move quickly on the planting side, our requirement for erosion control will piggyback nicely onto that portion of the project. It was something that was gonna have to be done anyways. Does that make sense?
Yes, just from my understanding, so I have permission to get somebody to come out
No,
and...
just, we didn't take a, we didn't have a
Oh,
motion,
okay.
we didn't have a second, we didn't have a vote. So before we get there, you can ask those questions once we wrap this up, okay?
you may ask her how quickly she thinks she can get somebody out here to do this work, and that may guide whether you need to have a separate EO portion of stabilization or not. If she thinks she
Okay.
can get somebody out there in 2 weeks getting this work done, then it's probably sufficient to do it all in one whack. If it's gonna be,
Well, it sounds like
A
she
month
needs help,
plus,
guidance with the
then-
contractor, so I
Yeah.
think we need to accept that as the prima facie and say erosion control within 2 weeks.
yeah.
And then,
Well, excuse me, I can get somebody out there. I know a lot of people that
okay,
could do the work. I just want to make sure that Matt, or you guys, whoever, you know, has knowledge of these people and that they're okay to do the work.
okay. All right,
But I can get somebody out there very quickly, believe me.
all right, thank you. So still a 2-week recommendation for erosion control? We
Let's
wanna
do an
see what's
erosion
been
control
done.
within 2 weeks.
Right, okay.
Erosion control within 2 weeks, and maybe you give a month
A month
on
to
the plantings, and if it's
planting.
done within 2 weeks
Yep.
completely, then you're 2 weeks ahead of schedule.
Yep.
All right, so everything we previously said, plus the 2-week erosion control, Matt, do you want to require, do you want language in there for what type of erosion control, or generally speak about erosion control? How much detail do you want?
I think you'd either want silt sock, woven matting, or, I mean, they have other kinds where it's like a straw mesh that you roll out and just over all the exposed dirt areas. Otherwise, you could do, let's say, I think, at least a 6-inch silt sock along the back of the areas where the dirt is disturbed would be probably sufficient. So I could write that in to
You could-
like, any of the above
Okay.
would be
All right.
sufficient, or coordinating with the conservation. Department.
Perfect, all right. So we'll
Okay.
include the stabilization, and then we'll say a 1-month, 1-month duration for planting, and we want an update saying it's done in a month. Is that what we're being, all right. Do I hear a motion on that?
So moved.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Brian, seconded by Dot. We'll take a roll call. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that carries 5-0. All right, and Matt will be in contact with you with the
Okay.
paperwork to kind of guide you through the next steps, and he's a very valuable resource. You can reach out to him anytime.
Okay, so if I can get it done within the 2 weeks for the silks, without doing the silk sock, then I can get it done and not have to do that, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Basically, you have to, the silt sock or the stabilization, whatever that may
Okay.
consist of, has to be done within 2 weeks. If you can get somebody to do the entire project within 2 weeks, that's great. The site just
Okay.
has to be stable when they're done.
Okay, I get it, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure. And the last clarification is is it called the RDA with the fence thing? What about that?
That is on for May 13th? May 13th.
Okay, that's fine. Great, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Em.
Thank you, bye-bye.
I did the day before
Oh,
for
okay.
that one,
Oh,
just to
all
make
right,
sure
all
that
right,
it was
all
like
right.
not being wrapped up the same day as the
Got it.
meeting. And
Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on. I believe we're in updates, right?
Yes.
All right, updates. 4 Riverside Drive, admin review, please.
Yep, issued an admin review for removal of a mature Norway maple from the front yard, which was at the very extent of jurisdiction, up against the road. It was tangled in wires from power lines and posed a potential threat to fall on the residents. In fairness, it was not, hanging over the house in an absolute crush hazard, but trash, invasive tree species at the extent of jurisdiction with a potential hazardous situation. I just issued that. And again, whenever I issue these, we're putting the admin review with any of the information up in the OneDrive too for commission review. And then the second one was 33 Jones River Drive. I issued an administrative review form just to remove, this property has a pretty extensive backyard area that I think, is of legally permitted nature from what I can tell. Had a lot of storm damage. I told him anything that's on the ground, obviously, he can have cleared up. It was in the yard, but then the admin review part was really, there was about the top half of a maple tree that fell onto the salt marsh, and a good portion of a cedar tree, and there was one like hanging cedar branch that was laying right on the salt marsh. And I said all of that could be removed. No tree removal, no machinery, biodegradable bar oil, all that typical stuff, but really it was just removing a big broken piece of a tree from the salt marsh so we don't lose salt marsh. Similarly, we had somebody ask for something a few houses down a couple of years ago where a cedar tree had tipped over on the salt marsh, in the salt marsh, but was still rooted to the ground, was still alive. And I said, no, in that situation, I said that's not something that I would permit or that the commission would likely permit, because it was actually in the salt marsh on a little like hummock area, and just thought in that situation that was part of nature, and it was still had a chance to be alive and start growing, kind of vertically. But in this case, just broken pieces of limbs on the salt marsh, get them removed.
All right. Do you have updates on any ongoing projects?
Yeah, we have just today the PNS returned from the 83 Wapping Road. I've had town council working on a PNS.
Was that a PNS or an offer?
We already sent in the offer sheet that you signed, and the PNS was supposed to be done by the 15th. The town council did get that prepared in time to get it over for their review, but it took until today for them to send it back to me and say that they think it's sufficient. The PNS that council prepared does not have any signature space for the Conservation Commission on it. It said Board of Selectmen. So I just kicked that back to him today to ask if that's the way it should be. And my understanding was that the commission would sign it, but it may be that the BOS has to sign on every purchase of land. And since you already signed, and voted on everything up to this point, so I'm just confirming that with him, but that part of it is progressing. And
Just as a background, with the Winthrop Street acquisition, the board had to sign that too. So.
yeah, I just wasn't sure with that one because there was definitely more involved in that one because it was chapter and it was this.
But it was still
I don't
PNS
recall if
in
they
those
have to
terms,
sign every PNS or not, but maybe they do. So I just wanted to confirm that with council, but that is at least progressing. And I thought I was going to update you on a lot of other stuff, but my brain is pretty fried at this point, so I'm not going to.
Nice update.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. We're going to move to closing remarks. The next meeting will be held on May 13th, 2026, starting at 6:30 PM. The time is now 6 minutes to 9. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
By Megan, do we have a second?
Second.
By Dot. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, carries 5-0. We're adjourned.